the idea of agents, whether for writers, actors, or directors, is to serve as intermediaries between the talent and the buyers, the studios, the digital streamers now, like Netflix, companies of that sort. You're a writer, you've come up with a script for, say, a pilot for a TV show. Your agent says, well, you know, I know the right places for this. In fact, I know the exact buyer. This is not only this would be great for, you know, let's say FX or whoever, but I know the right buyer at FX, and I know the right buyer at this place and that place. And we'll go out with it and try to get it sold. Now, the sort of idea that people have, if they have any sort of thought about how agents get compensated, is that agents get 10% of what talent makes. And that's the way it worked in the past. But it turns out that even as long ago as the 30s, when agents first appeared in Hollywood, there were situations where agents were putting projects together and wanted to be paid essentially as producers. That's what we have now in two separate forms. One is called packaging fees, the other is affiliate production. Now, what do those mean? Packaging fees is a situation that's arisen over the last 50 years where the agent, instead of taking a commission from their clients, they forego the commission, they get paid by the studio. So if the show is sold to a given studio, not only is the writer getting paid by the studio, the agent is getting paid by the studio. The Writers Guild says that's a conflict of interest because they're butting heads, they say, as to who gets what compensation. The other factor that has been a big problem for the Writers Guild is what's called affiliate production, where the three largest talent agencies have actually set up affiliated companies, sister companies, that are themselves mini studios or production companies, creating content and owning content themselves. Now, those companies are doing better deals with the writers than the existing studios are. That's the argument that the agencies make, and it's the case right now, at least. The Writers Guild says, look, in essence, you're being our boss and our agent. That's an inherent conflict of interest. Yeah. So conflict of interest is the theme for the Writers Guild. Acting like producers is the theme for the agencies.
And can you tell us, I know I don't want to get too into the weeds, but in terms of understanding the money behind this, and I know there's a tricky formula to understand here called the 3-3-10. Can you just give us the gist of how the business models for these two different ways of getting the agent-writer relationship done, how it plays out?
That's right. So 3-3-10 is the formula for packaging fees. And what it means is sort of, well, first of all, one thing, there's one other thing to know, which is that when you see a TV show on, you know, AMC, FX, ABC, wherever, that network usually did, or often did not make the show. There's also a separate studio involved. Sometimes it's actually a sister company. There's ABC Studios and ABC Network. Sometimes it's a totally different company. Mad Men, for example, was produced by Lionsgate but appeared on AMC. So there are multiple companies in this relationship. The network pays a license fee to the studio in order to finance the production of the show and have the right to show the show. 3% of a reduced version of that license fee is what gets paid up front, episode by episode, to the agency in a packaging fee situation. So that's the first three in the 3-3-10. It really amounts to about 1 or 1.5% because it's a reduction on the license fee.
Yeah.
But they still call it 3 to make it even more confusing.
Yeah. There's
a second 3 that really never comes into play because it only comes out of if there's any net profits, which there never are. We can leave that aside. That first 3, typically, by the way, to put a dollar figure on it, it's around $40,000 or $50,000 an episode to the talent agency.
Yeah.
The 10 is out of what's called modified adjusted gross receipts, which is a form of profits that only occurs, you only reach those profits if a show has been on a number of years and then gets sold into an aftermarket, like syndication, you know, in other words, a place where it reruns. So, for example, a show that was originally on, you know, ABC might get sold onto a cable network, or might get sold in syndication around the country. If the show has been going long enough, there will be enough profits that that 10%, that 10, which again is usually about 6.5 or 7, not 10, can be worth many millions of dollars. The creators of the shows also get a portion of that back end. And I had an agent say to me, for example, regarding a very prominent showrunner, you understand, this person said to me, you understand, he's not a millionaire, he's a billionaire. And that's because of the profits he got off of these shows.
Well, and I think that's been a lot of the complaints I've heard from writers is that they're saying the people who are at the top of this make a ton of money, but the rest of us and the majority of us are not. And hence you see the Writers Guild, I think they are claiming 7,000 of their 8,000 writers who have representation fired their agents. And the timing of this is really interesting in terms of the natural cycle of TV show developments. Talk to us about where we are right now.
Right. So 7,000 writers under orders from the Writers Guild, at least 7,000, it's been more than, that was the figure as of a month ago, have fired their agents out of 8,800 who had agents, out of 14,500 who were in the Guild. We are in what's called staffing season for broadcast shows. So broadcast TV, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and the CW. Those traditional networks that people technically can watch over the air if they're not watching on cable, have a very fixed calendar cycle. And right now we are in the season where they are hiring writers for their shows. They're staffing up their writers' rooms. The writers then sit together and work on scripts. The agencies predicted that without agents, that staffing season would be chaos. How would you find the writers? It turns out it hasn't been, by at least to the extent that we can tell. Now, it's only anecdotal. We don't have a survey of all writers, but as I talk to showrunners, what I'm hearing is people anticipated the problem, they anticipated that there was going to be this dispute, and had their lists of writers ready.
And what also has happened is that there have been these hashtags that have cropped up. And so we see a lot of writers connecting with showrunners and whatnot, or at least the reports of it are happening on Twitter. And in my mind, the analogy here, and again, it has to do with agents, there used to be the world where we would call a travel agent and we would book a vacation that way. But now you can get on your phone and through the powers of the Webernet, right, you can find not only a place to stay, but those niche channels, which I find really interesting in all this, that the Writers Guild and what's kind of come out of all of this are certain Google Docs and spreadsheets that show you, hey, are you looking for an LGBTQ writer? Here you go. Are you looking for a Native American writer? Here you go.
Looking for someone who's good at dialogue, someone who's good at dialogue in a crime show and has an inner city perspective, or this, Latina perspective, whatever it is. And it is Twitter. It is also mechanisms that the Writers Guild itself set up, a database that showrunners can search. What showrunners are more concerned about, though, is what comes next, which is called development season. That's June through August, and that's where they look for new ideas, not for this fall, because that's what they're writing in the writing room, but for the following fall in broadcast. And is this Writers Guild mechanism going to be enough to bring a flow of new ideas and new shows for the following year? We don't know yet.
And it would seem, and unfortunately we only have a little bit of time, it would seem that the agents are maybe a little freaked out that this Twitter thing is working out so well. So in the past 24 hours, they made a foray to bring the Writers Guild back to the table. As I understand it, the Writers Guild has said yes, they're talking about maybe next week sitting down. We just have a few moments left, but if we were going to do the previously on TV version, sum up what has happened most recently in all of this.
Most recently, we are going to see meetings next week. Whether those are going to be productive or not is an open question, because it's not clear that the Writers Guild and the agencies have room for compromise. Meanwhile, one of the major agencies, Endeavor, parent of WME agency, has announced today, surprisingly, that they're proceeding with plans to go public, based on the idea that they have all these divisions, including affiliate production and including access to writers, which right now they don't have. It's unclear how that's going to work out.